Hi, I'm Jacqueline, a 34-year-old old-fashioned consultant, living in sunny Los Angeles. Life here often resembles a dream. Warm weather, beautiful beaches, and vibrant social life envelop the city like a veil, creating the illusion of serenity and happiness. My husband, Thomas, is a high-ranking man whose position opens the doors to a world that many can only dream of. Our house is a modern fortress of comfort and luxury, where every item, from furniture to paintings on the walls, was chosen with love and taste. Thomas and I are the perfect couple in the eyes of society, and our life, seemingly so perfect, was framed in a perfect picture that can only be admired. We built our lives the way software engineers create complex systems, carefully thinking through every detail. Our weekends were filled with brunches on the terraces of trendy restaurants, parties with influential friends, and leisurely walks around Los Angeles, where we were always greeted with smiles. It was a life that many envied, and I, without even noticing it, became a hostage to this beauty and order. But life has its unexpected twists. On one of the sunny days that never seemed to end in Los Angeles, everything changed. It all started when Thomas's sister, Megan, lost her job. She was 29, and her life path turned out to be more difficult than she would have liked. In search of stability and support, she turned to us, asking us to stay for a while. It was a moment when doubts arose inside me, but I couldn't afford to voice them. Family is important, I told myself. Of course I have to help her. And I agreed, not suspecting that this simple answer, yes, would be the beginning of the end of my illusion of an ideal life. Megan moved into our house shortly after she lost her job. I tried to maintain a warm atmosphere, did everything to make her feel comfortable, and included her in our daily lives. I believed that her presence would only strengthen our family ties. However, I soon began to notice that strange things began to happen in our house. At first it was insignificant. My favorite watch, a gift from Thomas, disappeared from the dresser. In the morning, full of confusion, I asked Megan if she had seen them. She laughed as if it was a ridiculous question and said, "Oh, I thought they were mine." My fault. I chalked it up to a misunderstanding, not giving it any importance. After all, who would think twice about watches, even if they were so expensive? But that was just the beginning. A few days passed, and I began to notice that other items began to disappear. My makeup, the precious diamond ring I got for our anniversary, and even one of my designer bags. Every time I talked to Megan about it, she laughed and waved me off. "I'm sorry, Jacqueline, I didn't want to take your things, I just got confused." Every time I tried to calm myself down, assuring myself that these were random mistakes that would not happen again. But the uneasy chill that settled inside me grew stronger. Thomas always seemed to stand by his sister's side. "It's not easy for Megan right now, baby," he said when I shared my suspicions. "You shouldn't jump to conclusions." It was as if he was dismissing my feelings as something insignificant that could be disposed of in one fell swoop. But at that moment, I realized that his support for Megan was giving me the creeps. I could see that there was more to his calm words. There was cash that I kept for emergencies, mostly for those moments when life is suddenly challenged and a quick solution is needed. The bills were neatly stored in the safe. The amount, several $1,000s, gave me a sense of security, until one day I discovered that several $1,500 bills had disappeared. Anxiety instantly gripped me. Panic rose inside me like a wave on the shore, and I couldn't get rid of the obsessive thought, Megan. Somehow she was involved in this. This thought has sunk deep, like a splinter that cannot be ignored. I told Thomas about it, trying to keep my voice steady, even though everything was shaking inside. "Thomas, I think Megan is stealing from us," I began, feeling every word seem to break through walls of disbelief. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Maybe you just forgot that you spent that money, Jacqueline. You know how you can lose count sometimes." His voice was casual and his tone was annoyingly calm. His indifference struck me right in the heart. I expected support and understanding, but instead I was faced with indifference as cold as a wall. At that moment, I felt like everything was falling apart. My own husband didn't believe me. I was losing ground, as if my reality was starting to crack, like a mirror ready to shatter into 1,000 pieces. And that's when I realized that something was seriously wrong. Thomas was blind to the manipulations going on under our noses, and it made me doubt not only Megan, but everything that I thought was unshakable. Frustration boiled inside me, becoming anger that I could no longer contain. I decided I had to take matters into my own hands, and a plan began to form in my head. It was simple, but effective. I bought invisible ink and carefully marked several $1,500 bills. In addition, I installed a hidden camera in the dressing room, where there was a safe. It was a risk, but I knew I had no other choice. I had to find out the truth. The days of truth stretched into a painful week. Every day I came home, opened my computer and, with a beating heart, watched the footage. Night after night, I lived in anticipation of the moment when my suspicions would be confirmed, or perhaps they would turn out to be wrong, giving me much desired relief. But finally, on the 4th day, I got my first breakthrough. Megan appeared on the screen in front of me. She did not hesitate to open my safe and, with an audacity that shocked me to the core, took the marked bills and, without hesitation, one of my rings. My heart was beating so hard that I could barely breathe. I watched the betrayal unfold on the screen and could hardly believe my eyes. My gullible picture of the world was crumbling in front of me, and with it my faith in others. "I caught you," I whispered to myself, realizing that there was no turning back anymore. Determination boiled up inside me. That was my moment, the moment when I had to put an end to it. After collecting all the evidence, I felt a mixture of anger and relief. It's time to confront Megan. I found her in the living room, sitting on the couch and nonchalantly scrolling through her phone. This picture of everyday serenity in her performance caused me a feeling of deep disgust. "Megan, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice even though everything was boiling inside. She looked up, her gaze lingering on me for a moment before returning to her phone. "What happened?" she replied, dispassionately, as if what was happening was nothing more than a minor detail. "I know you took the money from my safe," I said, trying to stay calm, even though my heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed to be heard all over the room. "I have proof." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw the mask of self-confidence slip away. "What are you talking about? This is crazy." "I would never do that," she tried to protest, but her voice was already shaking. I took a deep breath, feeling my hands shaking slightly from the strain. "I took it all on camera. You can either come clean, or we'll do it the hard way." Her bravado faltered for a moment, but then she found the strength to laugh again. "Do you really think that some kind of camera scares me? Good luck convincing Thomas. He'll never believe you, Jacqueline, not his sister." Her words hit me like a slap in the face, burning and taking my breath away. A storm of emotions exploded inside me. Betrayal. Not only from Megan's side, but also from Thomas's side. I couldn't believe how confusing everything had become. Now I was fighting not only for my possessions, but also for my dignity, for my connection with reality. The tension in the room was becoming palpable, like heavy air before a storm. I realized that this confrontation with Megan was just the beginning. I had a chance to celebrate Thomas's recent promotion at work, but all I could think about was the upcoming confrontation. We were going to a family celebration, and I knew this was my opportunity to finally expose Megan in front of everyone. Anxiety and adrenaline have filled me since the morning. I could barely sleep the night before, rehearsing countless times in my head what I would say, how I would present the evidence, and how I could make everyone see the truth. Would Thomas believe me? Will he take my side or reject my concerns again, as he did before? These questions were bothering me. When I woke up, I chose a dark blue dress that perfectly fitted my curves. It gave me confidence, like armor before a fight. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and tried to convince myself that I was ready. I am ready for everything that lies ahead. Thomas entered the bedroom, beaming in his new suit. He smiled, his gaze shining with the warmth that used to fill our lives. "You look great, honey," he said, coming over and kissing me gently on the forehead. But his words, instead of consolation, only increased the feeling of inner tension. They seemed artificial, as if they were hiding a huge gap that had formed between us lately. "Thank you, Thomas. I just hope everything goes well today," I replied with a tight smile, trying to hide my anxiety. He didn't even notice my concern. "Of course, everything will be fine. Everyone is happy to see you," he said, as if not noticing the impending storm that was bubbling inside me. When we arrived at his parents' house, the atmosphere was cheerful and lively. Thomas's mom, Karen, bustled around the kitchen, surrounded by the smells of grilled meat and freshly cooked dishes, which mixed in the air with the scent of freshly mown grass. Relatives were already gathered in the backyard, laughing, exchanging news, drinking wine and cocktails. I smiled, talked to Thomas's cousins, laughed at their jokes, but my thoughts were far away from here. I was constantly watching Megan. At some point, I caught a glimpse of her. She stood in the company of other relatives, laughing and chatting cheerfully, as if nothing in this world was wrong. This image of her serenity made me incredibly angry. How could she be so calm when she was stealing from me behind my back? How could she enjoy her life knowing that she was destroying mine? I looked at Thomas again. He was engrossed in a conversation with friends about work, completely blissfully oblivious to the drama that was unfolding right under his nose. Finally, the moment of the main event of the evening came, a toast to Thomas's promotion. All the relatives and friends gathered around, with glasses in their hands, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. It was my moment, the moment of truth. Thomas stood up, beaming with pride. His face was glowing like when I fell in love with him, and for a moment I felt a pang of nostalgia. "Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to me that my family is here to celebrate this achievement," Thomas began, and the room filled with applause. I looked at him, and a contradiction seized me. I was proud of him, but at the same time I couldn't get rid of the feeling of betrayal. After the toast, Thomas raised his glass again. "And I especially want to thank my wonderful sister Megan. She was always there for me," he said. That was my signal. I stood up, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room on me. My heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed like everyone could hear it. "I have something to say too," I announced, trying to keep my voice steady despite the trembling inside. All eyes were on me now. Thomas looked at me in surprise, his smile faltering. Jacqueline, maybe now is not the right time," he began with a slight confusion. "No, Thomas. Now is the perfect time." My heart was pounding, but determination flooded me. I took a step forward, looking directly at Megan. "Megan stole money from me. I have proof." There was a tense silence in the room. Megan's face turned pale, but she immediately screamed, raising her voice. "What are you talking about? You can't just accuse me like that." "I don't accuse without proof." I paused, and then pulled out my phone. "I have a video of you taking money from my safe, and not only that. Do you think I don't know about the jewelry you borrowed?" I connected my phone to the TV, and a recording appeared on the screen showing Megan, without hesitation, rummaging through my closet. There was silence in the room, everyone was staring at the screen, wide-eyed with shock. The air seemed to freeze, and I felt a mixture of relief and horror wash over me. It was the moment I had been waiting for, but with it came fear. How would Thomas react? His decision could change everything. I looked at the screen and pointed at Megan, saying firmly, "Do I see? It's you, Megan, who's taking my money. How can you deny it?" Her face contorted with anger, She glanced at me, and her voice, usually confident and hard, sounded uncertain. You set me up. This is crazy. You just want to ruin my life. Her words were filled with rage, but now there was a weakness in them that she couldn't hide. Before I could answer, Thomas stood up. His face was flushed with rage, which I saw in his eyes for the first time. You humiliated her in front of everyone, he shouted, his voice echoing around the room. His words hit me like a slap in the face. What's wrong with you, Jacqueline? You've always been so dramatic. I froze, stunned, not believing what I was hearing. My world was crumbling right before my eyes. Thomas, it's not about me, it's about the truth. She stole from us. I said desperately, but he wasn't listening. His face was flushed with anger, as if he couldn't accept reality. You turned my family against me. How could you? His voice was getting louder, his words hurt me to the core. And in one terrible, shocking moment, he slapped me sharply in the face. The room froze in complete silence. The sighs of my family echoed in my ears, but I couldn't hear them anymore. Everything went dark, and my whole world narrowed down to Thomas and his furious face. Get out of my house, Jacqueline. I want a divorce, he said in a cold and firm voice. These words struck me like lightning, making me numb. It all seemed surreal, as if I was looking at my own life from the outside, unable to understand what was going on. I came here to uncover Megan's deception, to get my life back, my truth, but instead I was kicked out of the life I once built with Thomas. Tears were streaming down my cheeks as I grabbed my things and headed for the door. The shocked faces of his family merged into a vague mass, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart, deafening in this silence. Megan stood to the side with a victorious grin on her face, knowing that this situation was woven by her hands. I went outside the house, and the world around me seemed heavy and oppressive. I could barely breathe. I stood up for myself, but it cost me everything that was important to me. As I walked away, leaving Thomas's house behind, one thing was beating in my head: this is just the beginning. The beginning of a much bigger battle that I had to fight, a battle for my dignity, for my truth. I couldn't sleep all night. The noise of the city outside the hotel window seemed muffled and far away. In the morning, when I looked at my reflection in the mirror, another woman was looking at me, one who had lost everything, but had gained something equally important: determination. I could let myself drown in this defeat, let Megan and Thomas destroy me, or I could fight back. I grabbed my phone and called Lisa, my best friend since college. Jacqueline, thank God you called. I was so worried about you, she said, her voice like a balm for my broken nerves. I'm in a complete mess, Lisa. Thomas slapped me in the face and said he wanted a divorce, I whispered, feeling a lump rise in my throat again. Lisa was silent for a moment, and I could imagine her face tensing with anger and worry. Jacqueline, I'm coming. You're not alone. We'll get through this, you know. We can handle it. I don't even know where to start, I confessed, and my voice trembled with fatigue and uncertainty. Everything seems so complicated and confusing. You're stronger than you think, Jacqueline, Lisa replied softly but firmly. You need to get this situation under control. Have you thought about hiring a lawyer? I sighed, lowering my head. I know I have to. But I'm afraid. What if I lose everything? Jacqueline, it's not just about money. It's about your dignity and safety. You have to protect yourself, otherwise, what's next? I'll help you find someone. Lisa's voice sounded confident and caring, and it gave me strength. A few days later, Lisa called me with the news that she had found a lawyer, Karen, a specialist in divorce proceedings, especially in cases of emotional and physical abuse. The very knowledge that someone was ready to take my side gave me confidence. When I entered Karen's office, her calm and professional aura immediately made me feel more determined. I sat down opposite her, and she looked at me with understanding and compassion. "How can I help you?" she asked softly, making it clear that I was in good hands. "I want to file for divorce," I began, trying to speak as calmly as possible. My voice was no longer trembling. I told her about what had happened, about Thomas's slap in the face, about how I was left alone, about Megan betraying me. Karen listened attentively, making notes. When I finished, she looked up and said, "It's important to document everything, Jacqueline. We need to establish a pattern of his behavior so that we have enough evidence." Her voice was professional, but there was support in it. "I also want to press charges for hitting him," I said, feeling confidence grow inside me. "I can't let him get away with it." "We'll work on that too," Karen nodded. "It's very important to hold him accountable for everything he's done." With these words, I felt a surge of relief. I was finally starting to take control of my life. Weeks have passed. I immersed myself in my work and the trial, realizing that it was in this battle that I could regain control of my destiny. I fully focused on my career as a fashion consultant, putting my energy into projects that inspired me and helped me feel needed and important. The long hours of work began to pay off. My boss noticed my dedication and offered me a leadership position. It was a moment when I felt alive again, when every little victory fueled my determination to move forward. But at the same time, I learned from Lisa that Thomas and Megan weren't doing so well. Megan's theft became known in their family, and one day Lisa, meeting with me over a cup of coffee, said, "Jacqueline, I heard that Megan was caught stealing money from her new job. She has been charged with serious charges." Lisa spoke with a slight note of satisfaction. It was a disaster for Megan, but I was no longer happy about her fall. I was too busy rebuilding my own. "And Thomas has problems too," Lisa continued. "Because of all this drama, his company is losing customers. The sister he has always been so close to has now become the cause of his problems." Listening to this, I realized that I could no longer be the one who would decide something for Thomas. My time with him is over. And although part of me wanted to help, I realized that this help would not bring me happiness. One evening, when I was settling into my new apartment, a message flashed on my phone screen. It was Thomas. "Can we talk?" I made a huge mistake. My heart skipped a beat at the thought of him trying to reach out, but a wall of protection grew inside me. "Jacqueline, don't do this," Lisa warned when I told her. "You've come this far. Don't let him pull you back in." Her words echoed in my head as I reread Thomas's message again. "You're right," I whispered to myself. "I have to think about my well-being." A few days later, there was a sudden knock on my door. I opened it, and Thomas was standing there. He looked exhausted, as if he had lost most of himself. "Jacqueline, I need to explain myself," he began, his voice trembling and pain shining in his eyes. "I don't want to hear this, Thomas." "You've made your choice," I said firmly, feeling a sense of clarity blossom inside me. "I know I screwed up," he pleaded. "I should have believed you. I should have been there." I shook my head. "You weren't, Thomas. And now I need to focus on myself." His face fell, and I could see the pain slowly engulfing him. "Please leave me alone," I said, closing the door. When it slammed shut, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. It was a new page in my life. Now this is my journey, and I will continue to fight for my happiness and self-respect, despite all the challenges ahead. Months passed, and the dust finally began to settle in my tumultuous life. Every little thing, every failure, and every achievement has become part of a long road to recovery, both personal and professional. Court battles became a kind of test for me, not only according to the law, but also in life, when with every step I gained more and more confidence in myself and my abilities. My divorce process was already in full swing, and every day I felt stronger, taking steps to create a future that now truly belonged only to me. The legal proceedings were a mixture of anxiety and hope. Every conversation with Karen's lawyer filled me with the belief that I had made the right choice, that my fears were just a temporary obstacle that I would definitely overcome. One day, in the middle of a normal working day, a call rang and Karen's name appeared on the phone screen. "Jacqueline, I have some news," she began with a note of matter, of fact in her voice, but I already felt that this was going to be an important conversation. My heart was racing in my chest, making it impossible to focus on anything but her words. "We have entered into a settlement agreement with Thomas." I froze, not daring to believe what I had heard. "You will receive a fair share of the assets," Karen continued, "and a restraining order against any contact with him will take effect. This is final." My voice trembled with emotion as I whispered softly, "Thank you, Karen. It means a lot to me." Tears of joy and relief came to my eyes. I had been fighting for this moment for so long, for my freedom and independence. And here it is, the liberation I'd been longing for. That evening I decided to celebrate this small victory. I called Lisa and invited her to my house for a small housewarming party. It was symbolic, a new apartment, a new stage of life, a new me. "We need to toast your new life," Lisa exclaimed over the phone, her voice filled with genuine excitement. I felt a warmth spreading inside me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in so long. I spent the next few hours in light preparation, preparing snacks, arranging flowers in my new apartment. Every step was imbued with calmness and joy, which filled my soul with lightness. In the evening, when Lisa arrived, she brought a bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," she proclaimed, raising her glass, "and to finally getting rid of the toxic people in your life." We laughed, remembered our student days, the times when we first felt the freedom to be ourselves. I realized that I hadn't felt really happy in a long time. It was the moment I craved so much, but I didn't even realize how much I needed it. This evening was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A few weeks later, during a morning walk with my newly adopted dog Benny, a faithful companion and a new source of joy, I met Mark, an old acquaintance from the fashion industry. He was walking towards me with a big smile on his face. "Jacqueline, it's been so long. How are you doing?" he asked with genuine warmth in his voice. I smiled back, feeling my soul fill with light from his presence. "I'm fine, actually," I replied. "I just got out of a difficult period." Mark nodded with understanding, his gaze full of admiration. "I've heard about Thomas and Megan. You've shown incredible strength, Jacqueline." "Thank you, Mark," I said, and for the first time I felt how the words of recognition really warmed me. "I'm learning to prioritize my happiness." We talked for a long time, and during that time I felt the very connection that I had been missing in recent years. We exchanged numbers, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to open my heart to the possibility of a new relationship. I was in no hurry, but something had changed inside. I was ready for a change, for a new chapter in my life, and I was no longer afraid of it. However, a few days later I received an unexpected message from Thomas. "Jacqueline, I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry. Now I understand how much I offended you. I hope you will find your happiness." Reading these lines, my heart contracted for a moment. These words awakened an old pain that I had been trying to heal for a long time. But, surprisingly, I no longer felt resentment. Thomas finally acknowledged the damage he had caused, and it meant more to me than I could have imagined. Taking a deep breath, I decided to respond with kindness, but also with clarity. "Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate your message, but now I need to focus on myself. I wish you all the best, but I can't go back." By clicking send, I felt the last weight that had held me in the past fall off my shoulders. I had finally closed the door to that chapter of my life and was now free to move forward. Later that evening, snuggled up next to Benny, I thought about my path. It was more than just going through hard times. It was about transformation. I realized the importance of self-respect and the strength that can be gained by protecting my boundaries and my happiness. Betrayal, pain, loss, all this was just a part of my story, but not the end of it. I not only survived, but also rebuilt my life. Sometimes losing everything is the first step to finding yourself and creating a brighter future. When I finally fell asleep that night, I was overcome by a feeling of deep peace. The road ahead was unknown, but I was ready to overcome it step by step, without looking back.